Hello, very good evening to you. A 5-year-old child's become the youngest victim of coronavirus in the UK on a day which saw another large rise in the number of reported deaths. The child, who had an underlying health condition, was among 708 people reported to have died since yesterday. It brings the total number of deaths in hospitals for the disease now to just over 4,300, but there are suggestions that the spread of the infection is slowing. Our science correspondent Palak Ghosh reports.
Brighton Beach would normally be packed on a day like this, but across the country it seems that most people are following the government's instruction to stay at home.
So we haven't got all day to go to the office.
The police have been told to engage with those they suspect of breaching the guidelines, like these people having a barbecue, and advise them to return home. One emotional and exhausted nurse posted a video after a shift in intensive care, explaining why it was so important for people to observe the guidelines.
We're desperately short of staff, and things are really difficult, and we're all really struggling. So I'm just saying to you all to stay in. If you stay in and you don't spread it and you don't catch it, that takes the pressure off of us, because we're all on our knees at the moment, to be fair.
That sentiment was echoed at the Downing Street briefing with the news that COVID-19 had claimed the life of a young child.
Our thoughts today are also with the family of the 5-year-old child with underlying health conditions who's tragically died. So again, you must stay at home to protect the NHS and to save lives.
The latest projections indicate that if people continue to stay at home, the increase in cases could begin to slow down in 7 to 10 days' time and then plateau. And I'd also like to ask Stephen Powis whether we should take any heart whatsoever from the flattening of hospital admissions in some parts of the country.
There is some evidence that the measures that have been put in place, everybody's compliance with them, is reducing transmission.
Now, for the first time since the coronavirus crisis began, Italy has recorded fewer deaths over 24 hours than the UK. Authorities say 681 people have died since yesterday, bringing the total there to more than 15,000. The number of new coronavirus cases there is also stabilising, and fewer people are being admitted to intensive care. Authorities, they do fear that that could give people a false sense of security, with many now asking the government to relax the lockdown restrictions. From Rome, June Mackenzie has sent this report.
A slice of normal. A local market reopening for the first weekend since Italy's lockdown began, albeit with some caveats.
Serviamo una persona alla volta, comunque vedendo che tutti mantengono la distanza. Abbiamo messo anche un ragazzo a fare il servizio d'ordine.
Do you think this is safe?
Così noi cerchiamo sempre di fare attenzione a tutto, ce la mettiamo tutta.
There are very few people, everything is under control, so it's okay.
What difference does it make having the market open again?
It seems like, normal.
But things are not normal. Italy may have reached the peak of its epidemic, with fewer deaths here in the last day than in the UK. But the country is still in strict lockdown. As the infections plateau and even start to decrease, and the weather keeps improving, it's going to be a real challenge for authorities to convince people to stay indoors and play the long game. Because the lockdown is working, they say. Just look at the hospitals, where the number of people in intensive care has fallen for the first time since this crisis began.
The situation, for the first time after weeks, is not worsening anymore. We are still working 12 or 15 hours per day following them. They're serious, they're critically ill, but we can now cope with it.
Let's take a look at some of today's other coronavirus news. In Spain, the Prime Minister has said the country is close to passing the peak of infections as the number of coronavirus deaths fell for the second day in a row. But Pedro Sanchez also extended lockdown measures until the 25th of April, saying the restrictions were still saving lives. The toll of 809 deaths in one day is the lowest in Spain for a week. A coronavirus-stricken cruise ship, which had been turned away from several South American ports, has finally docked in the US port of Miami. 2 passengers died overnight of COVID-19 on the Coral Princess, which is carrying almost 2,000 people, including around 200 Britons. New York State suffered its biggest one-day jump in coronavirus deaths so far, with 630 new deaths reported. Governor Andrew Cuomo has cautioned there could be worse to come. More than 8,000 people have now died across the United States. Now, around 4,000 prisoners in England and Wales are being released early to try to prevent what the Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, said could be an explosive outbreak of the virus. Our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford is outside the Ministry of Justice for us. Daniel, I imagine this would have been a very difficult decision.
Yes, Kate, remember, this is a government that was committed to restoring the Conservative Party's reputation on law and order. Officials have made it quite clear that both the Prime Minister and the Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, were very reluctant to go ahead with these prisoner releases, but the guidance from Public Health England was, with a large number of prisoners sharing cells, there was a very real risk of this explosive outbreak of the COVID-19 virus within a prison, which would have overwhelmed a local health service. So the decision has been taken to release 4,000 prisoners who are within 2 months of finishing their sentence anyway. It won't include people convicted of violent or sexual offences or prisoners who pose a risk to national security. And even then, it's not clear that this would necessarily prevent any problems in prisons further down the line. For example, tonight we have got the tragic news that 2 prison support staff from Pentonville Prison in North London have died following possible symptoms of the COVID-19 virus, though in fact neither of them had actually tested positive for the virus. Kate.
Daniel, thank you.